Well, hello. It is time to get set up for a new week. So, oh my gosh, got little things flying all over the place. All right, here we go. So I am going to start pretty much the same way that I usually do and set up my little trackers on the side. But before I do that, I want to put a little sticker right here to cover this up. And since all of these little washi sticker packs that I've been using for the last month and a half or so, none of them had any mushrooms, which was a huge bummer. I made my own. So I have some washi sticker paper. I took some pictures of mushrooms. This one looks like a butt, which is why I liked it so much. And I basically just sized it to the size that it needed to be, printed it out on the sticker paper, and that should go right there. So I'm gonna pop in my butt mushroom and go from there. So September is National Library Card Sign Up Month. So if you don't have a library card, maybe hit up your local library and go get signed up for a library card. And while I am not at a library anymore, they do, of course, hold a special place in my heart. Ooh, did not situate that one like I wanted to, but that's okay. So it's looking beautiful. I have my little butt mushroom. Whoa, very nice. Okay, so I thought that in honor of National Library Card Month, I'd tell you guys some of my favorite stories from working in libraries. You meet all sorts of interesting people with interesting questions and interesting problems, and you just run into a lot of things that you never really anticipated dealing with when you work at a public library. There is always something going on. So at one of my last libraries, we did telephone reference. That was a big part of the job. And people call into libraries with some of the most bananas questions. And it's stuff that, I never would have even considered calling a library to, find out an answer. But there's all sorts of stuff that people ask about. And I remember one time I had this woman call in. She was working on some kind of folk project, and she was looking for the words to a song. And I want to say it was the Swanee River song, the way down upon the Swanee River, that song. But she couldn't think of the tune for it. And so it's, the middle of the library, middle of the day, she's on the phone and she's like, can you sing that for me? And so I sat there and sang this song for her. And then after that, she would call in and request, for me and ask me to look up song lyrics and all of that and to sing them to her. And so I'd be sitting on the reference desk singing all of these classic songs for her. And my other librarians were always looking at me like, what is going on over there? But it was just kind of fun. It was, I don't know exactly what she did, but it was always kind of neat. So I'm just doing my regular little trackers here. And, putting in all my little dots. Another one, we had a gentleman that would call in, and his name was Felix. And he would, you always knew it was him because you'd pick the phone up and be like, hi, the blah, 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 blah public library. This is Katie. How can I help you? And he'd be like, madam. And it was like, oh, hey, how's it going? And he would ask some of the wildest questions. He'd want to know prison wardens in Georgia, and he'd want their contact information, or he'd want home addresses for different people in political power, and or he'd want transcripts from different radio shows that had played, and but the whole time he'd ask you your question or his question, and then the whole time he'd just be interrupting you like, madam, and it's like, all right, I get the point. Can you hold on for 1 second while I try to find this information for you. And the whole time he's just shouting madam at you. And that actually has lived on, and my sister and I madam each other all the time now, especially if we happen to see each other in public. So sometimes she would come visit me at work, you know, to go to lunch or something along those lines, and I'd be in the stacks and all of a sudden I'd hear madam. It would be my sister walking down the aisle to come get me. But I really enjoyed him quite a bit. It was just some of the most odd questions and the constant madaming, and it was fun. It was good. I also had another gentleman that would call in, and he was always baking. I had a lot of people that were baking that called in and asked me different questions. So I've got these little super cute stickers by Saltelier, I think. They are adorable. I bought them, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago, but they're just a bunch of little that's the I Like Bread sticker collection, and I thought this would be super cute for my dinner tracker over here. So I'm kind of leaning towards one of these little avocado toasts, because who doesn't like avocado toast? Or a little bagel, little bread bag. I think we're going to go with the avocado toast with this little guy right here. Ugh, it's so adorable. But he was always baking something, and he would call in and be like, hi, if I've got flour and I've got water, can I mix it with a fork? And it was like, yeah, you can mix it with a fork. That's okay. And he'd be like, okay, thank you. And then he'd hang up, and then maybe the next day or a couple of hours later, he'd call again, and he'd be like, hi, so can I mix it with a spoon? And I'd be like, yeah, man, you can totally mix it with a spoon. That's A-okay. And then he'd call back a little while later and be like, can I mix it with my hands? And it was always just very interesting questions about what he could mix things with. Not like ingredients together, but like utensils to mix things together. So I always enjoyed him. And one time I had a woman call. It was right before Thanksgiving, and she was telling me that, you know, her kids were coming into town, and they had this cake that she used to make when they were little that they loved, and they wanted her to make it again, but she had been trying to get it, you know, to bake up, and nothing was baking properly. And so she's like, I don't know, maybe you could help me out? And so she had this baking mix that used a commercial baking mix that had stopped being manufactured in like the 60s. And so we're sitting there, or I'm sitting there, you know, researching this baking mix to see like what it is that made that mix different than other mixes that are available on the market today, and what she could use to replace it. And we were on the phone, I think, for maybe close to an hour trying to sort it out. And we did actually eventually figure it out. And as far as I know, her cake turned out great, and her Thanksgiving was wonderful. But there's just all sorts of very interesting reference questions that you get in a library. It's super interesting. And then, you know, and you've got people that are looking for like genealogy, and they want to, you know, get information about their family or property records. I mean, there's just really all sorts of stuff. I've got 2 doctor's appointments on Thursday, you know, which is super interesting. And I remember one time back in the day, pre-pandemic, you had Ancestry, which is something that a lot of libraries have access to. And it's a super neat genealogy service, and you can find tons and tons of information, but for a lot of libraries, you had to be in the library in order to access Ancestry. For the pandemic, they opened up access so that you could log in sort of like through the library and get access that way, but you didn't have to physically be in the library. But before that, you know, you had to be there. And one time my dad called, and he used to work for the Navy, and he was going up for his security clearance to, you know, do the, I don't remember how frequently they had to re-up it, and he's since retired, but he called and he was like, Kate, honey, I can't remember the dates that I got married and divorced. Can you look all of those up for me? And for reference, he's been married and divorced 3 times, and he couldn't remember the dates for any of them. So I'm sitting there investigating my own dad, you know, trying to get the dates that he got divorced, where he got divorced, when he got married, where he got married, what the counties were. And I learned a lot about my dad that day, which was super fun, but it was just interesting. And, you know, or one time my husband was working on his dissertation research, and so he'd call and be like, hey, can you look up this? He was doing stuff with abolitionists in Puerto Rico and the Caribbean, and so he would call and ask me to, you know, look up a specific person to see if I could see any ship manifests, rivals, any of that information. And there was always just super interesting things that you looked up and researched and found out about different things. And my last library didn't have that. We didn't do any phone reference. It all went through sort of like a call center that the main number connected to. And so we never had any reference at my last library, which was such a bummer because it was so interesting seeing and hearing the questions and problems that people had that they were trying to solve. So, okay, I've got my events. I've got a really heavy Tuesday, that is the wrong day, and I've got a D&D game on Saturday. Oh, rats. That's an evening game, I think. Oh, that's a 4 p.m. game. That's not one of my morning games. Okay, hold on. Gotta white this bad boy out. I am in 3 different campaigns now, and they all have different times. And I got my times mixed up. This is my evening game. Got a morning game, an afternoon game, and an evening game. So that's super fun. You know, and then of course, because I was a children's librarian, there's always stories with kids and what they get up to in the different programs and events. And my first encounter when I was thinking about getting into youth services is I was doing my internship, and I was in Texas when I was doing my internship. And so we were at I was with a full librarian, and we were at a daycare doing some outreach and all of that. And so we were doing a whole program, and it was about snow, and it was super cute. And I remember this little boy who was probably 4 or so walked up to me, and for reference, because this makes sense for the story, like I'm a fairly small person. I'm short, I'm tiny, I'm small. And he walks up to me and he's like, so miss, when is your baby coming? And I was like, oh, I'm not having a baby. And he gave me the full up-down look. And he was like, uh-huh. And then turned around and walked off. And I was like, oh, the sass of this little kid. Oh my goodness. Because little kids can be a little brutal sometimes when they are talking, you know, about the way that you look. So it was just... And then one of my all-time favorite kids, Eugene, at one of my last libraries, he one time walked into a program, and I had my badge that hung from my neck, and it had my picture on it, and that's, you know, what I used to, you know, get in and out of the doors and all of that kind of stuff. So now I'm just going to go in and add some decoration. I've got these little Toady the Toadstool stickers. This is from an Etsy shop called Marina Art Studios. I also have my mushroom stickers, and I've got a few of these from this 2-leak pack right here. And that's got a couple of really cute mushrooms and some cute little foxes. So I'm not entirely sure what I want to do yet. Kind of leaning towards maybe this guy and maybe like that one or this one. Well, maybe we could do it this way. Oh, that's kind of cute. I like that. Do a little butterfly. I also have these little dudes, which are pretty cute. I could do those in this one. Oh, I like that. We're going to do that. We're going to put him right here and this little guy over there. And so one time, Eugene walked into a program, and he was probably about, I don't know, maybe 10 at this point. And he walked up to me and like grabbed my badge, and he was holding it and looking at it, and he was like, "Oh, Miss Katie, I feel so bad for you." And I was like, "Why, Eugene?" And he's like, "'Cause girl, you ain't got no hair." I had a little pixie cut at the time when I got that picture taken, and it was like, "Eugene, what are you? No, that's not okay." And yeah, he could be real sassy sometimes. He's such a good kid though. And I think I'm gonna take this little squatty dude right here. But, you know, just there was always something going on in the library. One time we had kids that threw cherry bombs into some of the toilets that were downstairs in one of my libraries and exploded the toilets. So the toilets were out of commission for a while because some kid threw a cherry bomb in there and blew up our toilets. So that was really fun. Another library that I worked in we sat next to a park and then in between a middle school and a high school. And so when school got out, we were flooded with kids. I mean, just constantly full of kids. And, you know, which was nice because we had sort of like a captive audience for programming, so our numbers were really good because numbers and metrics really matter in library programming. So if you're ever at a program and you see people counting to see how many people are there, there's partly because that is how you get state funding and other kinds of funding and how they allocate staffing. And so stats are actually wildly important to how a library functions and operates. But going along with that, you know, if you have a ton of teenagers all in one room, there's a pretty good chance that it's going to get a little crazy at some point. And we used to have to go do rounds around the library. And so it was like every half hour, one of the librarians would start making rounds just to, you know, keep an eye on everybody, make sure that nothing was going on, because one of their favorite things to do was to hang out in like the back stacks, which in our particular library at that time was nonfiction, you know, and there weren't a ton of people coming through, so it was a little easy to, you know, find little private nooks and get really familiar with other teenagers. And so you'd start doing your rounds and you'd hear this whisper, or I would start doing my rounds and I'd start hearing this whisper kind of preceding me of, oh, she's coming. And all of the teens would start scattering, or you'd sort of abruptly turn a corner and two of them would be like right next to each other, like not touching, but just barely not touching, you know, and then it's like, oh, no, you cannot be doing any of this in the library. And they're like, oh, we're not touching. I'm like, this level of closeness is unacceptable. Like, you gotta back it up. And, you know, there was just, we kicked out so many kids. There was just a constant like, all right, well, I've already been over here, you know, 4 times to talk to you guys, so you're gonna have to pack it up and try again tomorrow. And usually after the first couple of weeks of school, they were totally fine and had to kind of figured out how things worked, and it was okay. but the first couple of weeks of school were always a little wild. But I mean, you know, there were great kids that came into the library, and I used to manage teen volunteers, and so I'd have like a whole gaggle of teenagers, following me around to do different tasks and, projects and stuff like that. So it was neat. It was a fun job at times. I mean, of course, like all things, there are a lot of really not good things about working in libraries, and it's definitely one of those professions where, there's just a lot of stuff that happens in libraries, and people can get really threatening and really scary, and it's unfortunate, but that's just kind of how it goes. So all right, let's see. I've got some of my big projects coming in. What else do I need to do? Oh, Tuesday is the day that I do all of my, where is my thing? Here we go. That is my grocery shopping and meal prep day, which has been working out actually really well. That is the day that my husband has a very long, he teaches a night class, so he's not at home anyway, and so I do a half day, and then I head out and I go do all of the home stuff. So that has been working out pretty well. I also mow. The yard on Tuesdays, weather permitting. Sometimes it doesn't, but if I can get in the evening, that is the best. So let's see. Do I have any more of the little cleaning dudes? I don't know. I might. Yeah, I do. All right, cool. Didn't think that I did. Let's see. I think we're just going to pop this little guy right here. And actually, this week I need to do the AC filters. Perfect. Okay. That is beautiful. Okay, that is looking pretty good. I'm really quite pleased with how my little butt mushroom is looking over here. It's very vibrant, very that's obviously a mushroom. I'm really liking that. I'm really enjoying it. Okay, so now I'm gonna go in and highlight everything using my color of the month. I think I'm actually pretty much ready and set up. That was a pretty easy little setup for this week. So yeah, all right, good deal. Feeling ready, feeling good, and yeah. So I hope that was lovely and that you guys have a wonderful week. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more from me, subscribe, come back, check on me. That would be lovely. I would enjoy that a lot. And I think that's pretty much it. So I will see y'all in the next one. Bye.